Welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. This is your chance to get in on some of the great conversations happening at Podcast Central as we head into Holy Week. I am Ace McKay. Remember to check us out at ewtn.com/podcast so you can get the latest and keep up with conversations all through Holy Week, and knowing that we can also dive deeper into our faith with God. We love to do that each week as we get a look at this week's Word on the Word for this week's Readings Mass on Catholics Coast to Coast.
Palm Sunday, the beginning of the most solemn week of the liturgical year.
The home stretch of the Lenten season.
The final countdown.
We should probably just start.
Today, we're taking a look at the first reading from the book of Isaiah. It is depressing, but there are hints of hope and courage.
The writer talks about being rejected by those around him, like being spit on or having his beard pulled, which were grave insults.
Isaiah also says that his courage to endure all of those trials comes from the Lord. He believes that God is bigger than everything he's going through.
You know what that reminds me of? The Stations of the Cross.
Yeah, just the other day at Stations, I was thinking about where I would be if I was present at Jesus' Passion. Would I have run away? Or would I have watched Jesus carry his cross and stay with them to the very end?
That's a beautiful reflection. I always wanted to be brave like St. Veronica, who wiped the face of Jesus.
This week, we challenge you to ask yourself, of those present at the way of the cross, who would you be?
And join us here next week on The Word on the Word.
Bye.
Great insights for our Palm Sunday Holy Readings as we dive deep into God's Word this week. Hopefully this has been a great Lenten season for you, and we've got great conversations and new ones to introduce you to this week. As we continue with Catholics Coast to Coast, we want to tell you about one of our newest members, Encouragement Conquers All, discovering the secret of forming deeper connections with those that you love and find unwavering support. We're uncovering the solutions to enhance your sense of community and strengthen your relationships in a whole new way. This is Encouragement Conquers All with this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
How's it going, everybody? We're back in action on the Encouragement Conquers All podcast, and we're here to encourage, to build up others, to explore stories of people who've been resilient in life. And we're going to dive into forgiveness. We're going to dive into past mistakes. We're going to dive into accepting God's plan when it's tough. But I'm excited to have Tim J. Hanley on. So come on now.
Good to be here, brother.
You know, I just saw a book that I was looking at, and I didn't get to read the whole thing, but I was reading parts of it. And it was saying, get used to a multi-generational family, not the real family. And it was interesting. When I read that, my heart like broke. Because I was like, what it was saying is this, and this was like a conservative Christian book, like a faith type book.
Right.
And it hit me because I had to think about this for a second. Is this guy right? Get used to it. Or do I got to fight back or something? And it hit me really hard because what he was saying is the nuclear family of a mother and a father is really not going to be the case in this next generation. There's going to need to be coaches, mentors, people that care for others. I don't know if you see it that way. In my new book I'm writing, Unconditional Encouragement, I talk about how, like, by 2040, what I see in my stats are there's
Right.
going to need to be orphanages opening up again. Because of the lack of family. Like, just picture right now. Let's just say we go through some type of depression. I hope not. But let's just say we do. What happens? What happens to our nation? How do we respond to losing in that depression? Do we all just suffocate ourselves and like just take care of our own? Or do we I think that's what you're talking about with this jiu-jitsu family. Like, it's like you have this family that's like you're leaning on in so many different aspects, though you're not related. Like my coaching staff, like our team Amazing. So give me your thoughts on that. Does that speak to you? Do you think that's real what this author's saying? That what's going on here? You're going to have like strangers or people that become your friends helping you through life. Is that where we're headed? I don't know.
I don't know, brother. Look, I mean, I you know, I've been given some consideration. I met recently with somebody who's become someone who's I guess their 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 vision has been very formative for me over the past few months, and that man is the pastor of my home parish, Father Daniel at Mount Carmel in Boonton, New Jersey. He's just a fantastic preacher, and listening to his his homilies, his preaching each day, it's like it's been a beautiful formation for me, um, and one of the things that we were discussing just in, kind of side conversation outside of the context of his preaching specifically, but nonetheless, very much, I think, in his heart and therefore forming my own heart, is this notion of kind of uh, like tribalism, where, community is a gift, man. And we are in a time right now where we're suffering greatly. Our social networks are broader, social networks are broader than they've ever been. And maybe our real true sense of community is less significant than it's ever been. And so it's a dangerous time, man. And a big reason, Justin, that that I recently relocated my family to a new town, with the intention of joining a parish and a school and a place with like-minded people, again, to reinforce the same thing I was seeking through the gym and through the jujitsu training. I seek as well through the school and through the relationships of a church community, a family there. Um, is to build the tribe with like-minded people who desire the same things for their children, and even desire the same things as they get to know my own children that I desire for my own children. And those friendships, man, have been a gift, a gift to raise your family with brothers and sisters, not only the unfortunate friendships like yourself and myself who have physical distance between us. That's great enough that it makes it difficult for us to raise our families
Of
together,
course.
so to speak. Um, so it has been refreshing to walk closely with these families in this community and kind of build the tribe in that sense, so that they can be those reinforcements, and yeah, for my own family, for my own children.
Yeah, yeah. There's a point they're starting to build like the series, the docu series of the team, and there's a point in there where one of the brothers of one of my coaches comes on the scene, and he says, "Man, it's just interesting. Like families just looked right now in our culture so different. You can be a brother of somebody who's not your brother. You know what I mean? You can be a sister to somebody who's not your sister." And that's what you're saying. You're saying, look, we got to get back to the basics here.
You can be a father to somebody who's not your kid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Right? That
Yeah.
I mean, and that you live that as a coach, Justin. I know, with
Yeah.
your own players. I mean, you're a father for those guys, I'm sure.
Yeah. A few of them, they've, been homeless, don't have a dad, the whole deal. You want to be that image of that they can believe that it's real, that you can be a dad, you can be a brother, you can be a friend. And,
Yeah.
and what you're doing though, which is important, I think, and I think every dad, it's their responsibility to do is say, look, I'm going to intentionally surround my kids with the people that are living out what I believe is going to be most encouraging to them. Because I was on a podcast recently with, a couple, and I said, look, I used an example, it was Jessica and Victor, those guys. And
Sure. Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Of course.
yeah. And so I was on the podcast. This is what I said. I said, okay, look, it might not be encouraging for you, but it'd be encouraging for me. I want you to just walk in my house and don't knock on the door and just come in and say, hey, here I am. I'm here. I want to hang out. Like, Now, you might not think that's encouraging because I told my sister-in-law this. I said, when are you just going to come over, not knock on the door, and just walk in and say, hey, how's it going? And don't even tell me you're coming over. And she says, well, that would be ridiculous. And I said, yeah, for you. Like, I wouldn't go to your house, knock on the door, or it's open, come in and say, hey, how I'm doing, because I know you wouldn't think that's encouraging.
Right.
But guess what? For me, if you just opened up the door and said, hey, because and you know this growing up Italian, right?
Of course.
Like, if you're a grow-up Italian, like, right, I've been watching this Instagram. I don't know if you got it, but it's hardcore Italians. I'm like all over it right now.
No.
You got to look this up. I mean, it's fabulous. I mean, it'll make you feel like you're back home. I mean, seriously.
Bro. Yeah.
But like nobody, and people don't realize this. For me, and this is something I want to ask you, I'm interested. Like for me, it would be encouraging. I would probably, you know me, I'd probably tear up if somebody did that because that's how I grew up.
Right.
Like somebody's just going to walk in who's Uncle Werpy, Cousin Boober. Now, the problem is they might stay there for 3 months. Now, that's a problem. I mean, that's the problem. I don't want them to stay for 3 months.
My cousin Marco from Italy, man, like a year ago, my doorbell rings at my house. I come to the door and he's standing there from Italy. He's standing at my front door. What are you doing here, bro?
It's a normal day.
That's it. Needless to say, he stayed for 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're saying, okay, enough's enough here. I love you, but enough's enough.
No, I love him, man. I love him. No, it's funny. That's so funny, man.
But I've been really diving into this because it's funny to ask people, like, what would be encouraging for you that might not be encouraging for anybody else, or maybe only a few people on the planet? Because I think right now, what we're doing is not stepping on anybody's toes. We're not expressing our cultural differences and fighting for that. But there are groups that do that. But I think every one of us need to be fighting for what we see as valuable. Like, what's something that's valuable to you that might surprise somebody, even if it's the stupidest little thing? I don't know if you've ever thought about this. But
man, I haven't thought about this.
I like that I got a question you haven't thought about because you think about everything.
And you know me, bro. You throw a question at me that I haven't thought about, and I got to think about it now. I'm going to
have to go on to the next question.
Yeah, what do you want me to just spit an answer back to you? You just asked me. I haven't even had a chance to think about this yet.
Well, think about it. I'll ask you again, and you tell me when you're ready. But it's an important thing to ask because I believe that's unconditional encouragement, that you find out what that person's unique love is, that unique thing that would speak to them. And you say, I want to care for them in that way, even if it's uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. So I seek out those things in others. You're saying, Justin, like, what's the thing for them that they would find to be life-giving, that would be received like a gift and bring joy to them, and to serve them in that way, you're saying, not even though that necessarily that might not speak to you.
So yeah, if you come to Syracuse, New York, and you just walked in, you didn't tell me you were coming, and you just stopped by, you knew I was in town, and do you know how much I'd be like, oh my,
you'd be psyched.
It would be like the greatest day of my life. It's like this, right?
You ever see that Sebastian Maniscalco sketch on this? You ever see when he talks about this when people drop by the house? You ever see this thing?
What does he say?
Oh, Justin, it's so funny. It's so funny. He just talks about how back in the day, you'd walk by, you'd go to the house, you'd go to your aunt, cousin's house, and you just walk up to the door, you'd knock on the door, and it was the greatest thing. Oh my God, come in! It's so good to see you. Oh my, what are you doing? Well, we're just dropping by. We're in the neighborhood, And then he talks about how nowadays you come in, it's like you go, someone knocks on the door, and everyone's like, "Get down, get down!"
No, it's true though.
It's just the times have changed, man. The times have changed, but that's funny that there's something nostalgic about that. I can relate to that. I'm that way too when it comes to that. specific thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the same. I would love a drop by, a drop in, like, but I'm an extrovert, right? Like, so I feed off of friendship and social interaction. And so somebody coming by the house is like, that's awesome. And if 3 more people came after that, it would be even better, like the more the merrier type of a thing. That's what is life-giving for me, right? And those same things for others might just be like they would dread the idea of like someone just dropped.
For them, it might be like, get your favorite book out.
Yeah, sure.
Sit next to me, say nothing,
sure,
and read your favorite book because I know that you're reading, which is beautiful.
And I don't even think I've ever read a book.
No, but look, and this is what like my faith has done for me.
Yeah.
Like for me, what my faith has done for me, it's challenged me, and the way God's loved me is in that way. So it's challenged me to love others in that way. So like it's like the way God loves me. Like I remember I went out to Hollywood to give a talk, and like I go there, it's like a jail cell around the school, but it was like a super nice school. So I'm like, why is there a jail cell? I get to the front, like they're patting me down, like, okay, don't talk to anybody. So I get in the school and I'm like, I whisper to the principal, I'm like, what's going on here? She goes, oh, they didn't tell you? This is where all the celebrities' kids go to school.
Ah.
And so at the end of the talk, this little girl came up to me, and she was 12 at the time. You can find her online now if you look her up after I tell who she is, because she's like big time now. But she's crying because she's impacted by the talk I gave about faith and about motivating her to say yes to Christ and to live, an amazing life. And so she's super impacted. The principal goes, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you know whose daughter that is. And only like a few kids came up to me because they're a little nervous. They're not supposed to talk to her. And I go, no. She goes, that's Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone's daughter. And it was a stupid thing, but for me, it was God loving me in that little way that maybe no other speaker, like maybe, some other speaker wants,
I mean, nobody's been as impacted by Rocky Balboa as you have.
No, I've seen some kids that are impacted. I saw this video this week. I was dying about it. There's this kid that gets on, right? And he's like memorized like 50 lines of the Rocky movie. And he sees Rocky Balboa in public. Did you see that?
I saw that video. I saw that clip. That kid's awesome, man. He's great. Yeah. And Sylvester Stallone got such a kick out. He's like, they're going back and forth with the dialogue, right?
I think he knew more of the lines than Sylvester Stallone did.
Yeah, the kid was doing awesome, man. It was great.
But what I'm saying is like just to ask you, like, right now we need a paradigm shift, like, and how we're thinking of things. It's like, how can our family, how can what we value, like, how can we be of the service for others? And I know you're really good at this. At your restaurant that you own with your truckers. I remember, when you helped us out, we had the guy who, drives your trucks, the way he thinks about you and how your family and your mother served him for all those years. And like, we need to get back to like, it's not you who serve me, it's I who serve you. And you're really good at this. You're like, hey, how you always want people to feel welcome and feel a part of things. And like, how did you get that way? Because I think everybody needs to be that way.
I don't know, brother. How did I get that way? I mean, it must be it's like a heart for hospitality, and I would guess that it was probably formed through my own parents. Probably goes back that far. I mean, you knew me when I was in high school. Was that characteristic qualities of me at that time, do you think?
I lived at your house and your mom did my laundry for me.
That's okay. So there's really no question then where it came from. I think I think it's pretty clear that it came from her. You know what I mean? No. um, so yeah, I think it came from my upbringing, from my home. You know what was shown to me. You know through those experiences probably.
But
And
why is that important? Why is it important? Like if you were to go look up videos right now, it's like
uh-huh.
they're all about like how do you get yours? Like how do you control people? How do you make the most money? And like you know how a lot of the videos, not all of them, but many
I
of them,
know.
it's crazy. They're
Well,
not like
what's your value system, man? Is what that comes down to. I mean, what's important to you? You know, what's important to you? I think there was a time in my life probably where I could have gone the other way, uh, which would have been more along those lines of I got to get mine and do what I got to do to, be the best that I can. Not bad things. I mean, but it's like to be the best that I can be at the expense of anything or anyone is lunacy. I mean, you can't you become less of a man or less of a woman when it's at the expense of others, so where maybe the question is kind of where did that value system then come from, where I mean for me, Justin, that comes from Christ, man, um from being formed in the mind and the heart of Christ, and wanting wanting uh, good for others, and desiring that above even, trying to be considerate of those things selflessly, even if when it's at your own personal expense. That's like at the core of the Christian value system and the Christian life, you know?
Yeah, and even this, even secular like agnostics and secular leaders are saying this, which is so cool right now. It's a big movement going on. It's like, okay, it's not Jesus. Like then who? Or what are you? So what are we gonna live by? And I was so empowered by that because they didn't have
Yeah,
to say that. They could have said it was their 7 principles they created or something like that.
right, right.
But they've been really battling about this. And what's that all about, this man, Jesus, that people are battling about? I think it's so interesting.
Well, because it's a great way to live your life. Like I think secularly people can acknowledge the joy and the goodness to a life lived by those values, those selfless values, even if they're not believers in Christ. For me, I think it was the Christian life that formed that consciousness in me, but someone else could be formed in that through a different avenue. It's possible, that they could, kind of form that same selflessness and care for others, maybe above their own interests. And there's goodness in that, as a value.
Yeah, but there's a difference. I think it's into what you're following than who you're following. It's kind of like if you if I read like Ken Blanchard's books, right?
Uh
But
huh.
Ken Blanchard's a friend of mine, so they mean way more to me because I know the who I'm reading,
Yes.
and then I'm like able to be like, wow, I hung out with him. When he says that, it
Of
matches
course.
this. It's the same thing with Jesus. Like I've for me, I've met the who. The who changed my life. Like
Right.
I've never been the same since I met Jesus Christ. And you can say the same thing because I
Yeah. You
remember
and me
when
both, man.
you were young, and when you decided to say, no, because I think you were at that point. Like what you were doing was better. And then something clicked for you where I don't know, do you remember the process in your brain, or maybe you do remember where it went from what you're living is good because you're like, I want to be a good person, right? I come from a good family. But then you're like, no, I want to radically live for the who, who is Jesus Christ. And it's interesting
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
mine was like one day for me. It was, I don't care what I'm living for. Now I'm going to live for the who, Jesus. Yours was a
Right.
gradual thing. So I'm just interested what happened.
Yeah. I guess it was great. I mean, it wasn't.
Or
I
maybe it
mean,
was a day. You tell me the story.
well, there were some pivotal moments for me. I think that but maybe it was more of a process. I mean, I remember as a young man in elementary school being like just having a real interest in the things of the Lord. I was interested in what the CCD teacher, Mrs. Magarelli, was teaching in the front of the class. Like I was interested in it, man. I cared about it. Like I wanted to know more. My interest was piqued always. I acknowledged that there was something holy about the liturgy. I didn't understand it, but something about it. That's probably true for many or most, or at least many of us. I think, even if we don't understand the liturgy, and there might just be an initial reaction to experiencing it, a liturgy that's well done anyway. That like, wow, that's beautiful. There's something holy here, otherworldly. Um, and then, of course, when I was in high school, there was an experience when you came to my high school actually, uh, and gave a talk to the school, and that was very impactful for me as like a moment because you proposed this radical call that Christ wants something for you and from you and wants to give you the greatest life possible, basically. And that was attractive to me because I'm like, oh, I want the greatest life possible.
Yeah,
Maybe
of
not in
course.
those words per se,
Yeah.
but like, I think that was what was resonating in my heart. And then that kind of drew me to a retreat experience at the school with Father Michael Jolie, who ran the campus ministry. And I had a real moment there in confession on Saturday night, where it was very freeing and life changing. And, I think part of that confession experience was acknowledging the selfishness in my own life and in my own heart and in my own pursuits, acknowledging the self, the me, myself, and I unholy trinity that was ruling my heart and guiding my life, and being able to renew that vision with a new vision of putting God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in the proper place of primacy in my heart and in my life, and thereby elevating my own desires and the call of my life to be not about me but about him and about the other. I think that was formed, maybe very really, in that very first confession, after having not gone to the sacrament of confession in years prior, since I was a young kid. That was probably a pivotal foundational moment for that, and just kind of became what was reinforced as I grew in Christian community and understanding of what a life, Christian life, was and looked like.
But no, tell the kids I said I love them, and tell them Uncle Justin, when he comes by, he's gonna wrestle them, and they're gonna beat me up pretty soon. I'm gonna be like, oh man, they just roughed me
Hey
up.
man, hey, listen, we'll see. It'll get there soon enough, man. You and I are getting old, and they're getting
Oh,
big, man. So
I'm getting old, man. I look at my timeline. I got 25 years. If I'm lucky, my grandfather only lived till 69. I got 20. I only got 24 more years. I'm like,
oh
holy cow,
man.
I'm in big trouble.
Let's hope you have
I
a
love
couple
you,
more
brother.
than that.
I
I
love
love you too, bro. I love you too, man. Thanks for this, bro.
Finding an authentic brotherhood, great encouragement from Encouragement Conquers All, one of our newest podcast members, as you check us out, Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast. Easy to find. I am Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast returns, we're going to tell you about another new member of our family, Living the Call. And Leo Servino actually is the producer of Angel Studios and the new movie Cabrini. So before you head to the film, we want to give you the latest scoop on what to expect, and we'll get that full movie review coming up with Living the Call on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcast today.
This week on Living the Call, Deacon Charlie sits down with acclaimed producer Leo Severino. President of Metanoia Films, Leo has made movies such as the award-winning film Bella, Little Boy, Sound of Freedom starring actor Jim Caviezel, as well as Kevin James' latest Netflix comedy special, Irregardless, and his latest film, Cabrini. In this episode, Deacon Charlie and Leo discuss Christian media and how new filmmakers are elevating artistry and storyline while expressing truths of the faith in the beauty of the creative process. They break open Cabrini, its immersive nature, how they portrayed this first American citizen saint, and what the critics are saying. Son of Colombian immigrants, like Deacon Charlie, Leo shares his background, embarking on the creative journey and how his team of immigrants add to the reality of his films.
Historically, the Catholic Church has been the heart and the bedrock of so much amazing art. You know, the Michelangelos and the Berninis and the Raphaels and whatnot. And, you know, our hope and our mission was to try to make art at the highest level because, you know, that's the best way to get the truth. And so much of what is good across is by encapsulating it in the beautiful.
This is Living the Call.
Leo Severino, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Deacon. Appreciate you. Thank you for all your good work.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. And I got to tell you, having just finished watching Cabrini, by the way, that you're kind of throwing my one of my perennial media arguments into a little bit of a tailspin, because those who listen to this show and anybody who knows me and knows my background, and we have similar backgrounds, we'll get into that in a second, but know that I'm always begrudging the state of broadly Christian media and only occasionally saying, you know, with this notable exception or that notable exception. But what you and Eduardo and the team at Angel, and I know you have your own kind of production company, et cetera, but what this sort of new crop of producer, director, creator, maker has been doing in the Catholic space is beginning to make it more difficult for me to say that as a consistent rule, that sort of Christian media is you know, comparatively pretty awful, because what you've done with this Cabrini movie is really, really special. And so I'm happy to lose an argument, by the way, in that regard, if it means that there's going to be good content made. So congrats at least on that.
Well, thank you so much, Deacon. It means a ton. And, you know, I share the sentiment. It's tough because we don't want to cast aspersions on people. People are trying their best, and to get any piece of media, as you know, with even this podcast done, is often a miracle. You know, it takes so much, and you know, there's plenty of good intentions. But historically, the Catholic Church has been the place of the heart and the bedrock of so much amazing art. You know, the Michelangelos and the Berninis and the Raphaels and whatnot. And you know, our hope and our mission was to try to make art at the highest level because, you know, that's the best way to get the truth and so much of what is good across is by encapsulating it in the beautiful. So that's been our mission since we started our little company, and I know that's Angel's mission as well, an incredible distribution partner. So I'm glad that you at least think that we've at least somehow achieved this a little bit in our film on Cabrini.
Well, you certainly have, and we can get into specifically what at least I mean from having now viewed the film. But I got to tell you that it hasn't been without its share of conversation and maybe even in some cases some controversy, depending on how much time you spend on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I spend a fair amount. But there's this whole question about the creative process, and I'm interested in your perspective on this. This whole question of the creative process, I've found, at least in my conversations with Catholics, people of faith, especially people who have a philanthropic interest in putting their money to work against projects that are helpful to the gospel in the world. The conversation for me historically has gone something like this, which is the more creative the project is, sometimes the greater reluctance the individual philanthropist or influencers or people who are who are interested in putting their material means to work to support the church, the more sort of reticent they sometimes get. Now, I don't know if that's based on their kind of personal experience having funded projects and them not having worked out, but there seems to be this sort of initial resistance against putting money to work in creative areas, when the most powerful thing in my mind as a media guy is story. Like and to your point, where we've won for centuries, like in telling stories through art. And so I find it kind of baffling in some cases, this resistance against creative approaches to things. And that's where some, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, but some of the commentary on this film, you've had people very much looking forward to it, and other people saying, oh, well, it's not an exact duplicate of Cabrini's exact life, therefore we have to be suspicious of it. What do you make of this dynamic? Like, what do you make of this?
There's a lot there in what you just said, Deacon, and I agree with so much of it, if not all of it. The first part is yes, there's been somehow we kind of gave up art as a means of expressing beauty, expressing the truths of the faith, and expressing so much and inspiring so much goodness. It dates back even further. Our Lord himself used parables as his main means of teaching, which is, as you said, stories. They have a way to touch the heart and open up people's preconceived notions and put them in a contemplative space so that they can then be inspired to something true or good or beautiful. And that's why I started this production company with Eduardo and Alejandro, who you mentioned, our director and writer, Alejandro Monteverde, our other producer, my producing partner, Eduardo Verástegui, was because we thought, okay, is there a space for art at the highest level that also isn't going to be offensive to our faith and our morals? And, our first little venture at that was Bella, our first film, Bella. I don't know if you saw Bella.
Oh, yes, I did.
But at the time.
Which you wrote, by the way.
Yes, but with Alejandro, our director. But yeah, thank you. But that was an attempt to try to use I remember there was a film at the time, Lost in Translation, which was a big inspiration for us because it won a lot of critical acclaim, to make it a very character-driven, kind of a day in the life sort of story. And it wound up winning the Toronto Film Festival, the Audience Award. And we were just blown away with, okay, there's a model here, right? And it actually did well in the box office, sufficient to carry its budget and whatnot. And we thought, okay, we're in business. And then it took us years to do our next film, right, which was Little Boy. Because exactly right, there's a reticence, there's a built-in in this culture, in this generation, in the people of means, there's kind of a built-in disconnect or disinclination from being a patron of the arts, even if there's a possibility for profitability. And it wasn't until our last film, Sound of Freedom, where finally we're kind of proving the model, and now hopefully these doors are opening up a bit. Listen, my hope is that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other filmmakers and producers and writers that are inspired to kind of follow the path that we've been somewhat blazing, which we shouldn't have to be. I mean, there used to be the Catholic Decency League back in the days. There wasn't a film that wasn't, film couldn't be made that didn't pass certain standards of both art and ethics,
Well, it's funny because I had Jonathan Rumi on this show a while back, and even now with The Chosen, it's in its theatrical window for the 4th season. There's all of this noise about the series. There's a tremendous amount, 90% plus, which is overwhelmingly supportive and glowing. But there's this sort of like 10% of very noisy detractors, right? Who are, saying that it's a false Christ and like all this other stuff. And one of the things I think to myself is, like, to your point, we would want 10,000 of these things. It's not just about me creating a movie that people are going to watch and great, I've now sort of lifted my profile somehow. It's about really wanting to evangelize and spread the gospel. And so my response to folks like that is like, are you kidding me? It's like, there's so many things, there's so much slop out there, secularly and frankly, even in Christian media, for you to sort of pick on these things that have finally kind of broken the membrane, kind of broken through, and who are bringing people, maybe for the first time ever, an opportunity to encounter the person of Jesus or someone who reflects him, like Mother Cabrini does in your film, is to me like baffling. It's baffling that we would waste energy on this. We should be wanting 10,000 more of these and accepting of the small details that perhaps artistically we might disagree with. And so it fascinates me how people think that way.
Well, yeah, and you're right. That was the second part of your question that I was remiss to answer, and I apologize. But yes, fortunately, with our film of Cabrini, we've screened it already, dozens, if not many more times. We haven't really faced this. There's definitely not 10%, maybe less than 1% are like, I happen to know a little obscure fact about Mother Cabrini that's not in
that
the
you
film,
didn't mention, right?
But for the most part, I think we've been really true to the story. Our executive producer, Eustace Wolfington, has a great devotion to her, and he was very protective of, let's make sure we get her as she was, no more, no less, and that should be sufficient. And so what he had us do was, I was reluctant to make this film, by the way. He called me and he said, I have this film I want to make, and we already had things in development, and I was trying to steer him to this other stuff. He said, no, I need to make a film about Mother Cabrini. She's the first American saint. And I was like, first, I thought that was St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Yeah.
He's like, no, that was the first naturally born American saint.
Right.
The first American citizen saint is Mother Cabrini. And then he had me read a book on her life. And when I saw this incredible underdog story, the adversity that she overcame and what she built and how she affected millions of people, inspired millions, no one knows her name, I thought, man, we should definitely do something. So we hired our writer who also did Sound of Freedom with us. He's writing our next film with us. And Eustace had him read 26 books on Mother Cabrini's life, had him go to her orphanage or to her convent in Codogno, where the order was founded, read all the historians, go to the Vatican, read all the archives, read her case of canonization, come to the U.S., go to all of her shrines, at the end of which she said, now you're ready to write this script. So I think you have to encapsulate years of someone's life into a couple of hours, but I think we've been true to her story. And yes, maybe one out of a few hundred people says, I wish she was, we saw her pray the rosary more or something like that. And I'm like, you know what? I wish so too. But as you know, when you're making a film, by the way, there is all kinds of prayer in the film, and she quotes the scriptures, and God's all over the place, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, yeah, you're right. I wish you could say, hey, can't you appreciate what we were able to do? We're trying to make a film here that reaches a broad audience. And so you can't just interrupt the film to have a full rosary. As much as we would want to, that might, one, turn people off. It doesn't drive the story. It doesn't drive the plot. And even then, someone's going to complain, I promise you, that the rosary beads were, made of the improper wood or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, even more important than praying the scriptures, in a sense, is what you showed her living the scriptures. Like living the gospel, right? This sort of real integrated bodily way of just being a Christian and a religious out in the world in a way that we so seldom understand today. I mean, that's where the movie really triumphs. Look, I think some of the detraction, and to your point, it is tiny, but when I talk to creators and makers and people who are behind this stuff, I'm always fascinated by the perspectives. So some of the very small things that I've seen on Twitter, I'll read you one just as an example. Looks like Cabrini was made into a feminist cause. So unfortunate. Could have been a great movie. By the way, it is a great movie. But how would you respond to that person who, by the way, probably has never seen the movie? That's
right. That 100% they haven't seen the movie, because if they saw the movie, they wouldn't think that in the slightest. In fact, it's quite the opposite, in as much as she's so counter the current notion of feminism, and she displays a true femininity and uses that. And this is throughout all of her writings. The same objections they had to her kind of indomitable will, Mother Teresa faced as well. and no one would consider her an anti, or a feminist figure. So it's just silly. It's absurd. And what they're doing is they're confusing, and it's understandable at some level. Some of the marketing that's out there is kind of, we're releasing an International Women's Day, which is March 8th. And some of the marketing is skewed towards kind of the woman audience, which is what you need to do in order to get people to get into the theater. I would love for a large swath of actual hardcore feminists
100%
to come see this film
200%
so that we can expose them to maybe a view of femininity that isn't in their purview. So no, that's just a silly comment. You need to see the film and then you can gauge it. And I promise you, as you know, Deacon, having seen the film, that it's quite the opposite of that.
Without a shadow of a doubt. One final point on this. I really want to kind of go through the film, and I want to, get your perspective on a couple things. We're not going to spoil anything, but I just want to give you my sort of perspective on some of the things that I found really, really compelling about it. But one thing that you said, which I think is like super key, is the idea of who do we want seeing this film? Now, presumably you as a producer want everybody to see this movie, of course, like everybody to see it. But like in the areas of emphasis, and I'll tell you what my perspective is. I 100% agree with you that if we had every woman who's going to the Women's March and marching for what they believe their view of feminism is, to see this movie and perhaps be shaped or moved by this vision of true feminine genius, that's a major W. That's a major win, right? To me. So like when I read comments like that, I'm going, what do you think like the gospel is about, right? It's the good news for everyone, particularly the sinner, particularly the sick, the vulnerable, the person who needs the divine physician. Like we should want those folks to find a way to go see something, right? If you made this movie 2 hours of praying the rosary, we're probably not going to reach those people. Right? We're probably not going to have them come into the theater.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that along the lines of how you're thinking of this as a producer?
Absolutely. 100%. We try to make a film, every one of our films, for everybody. That's the idea, is to make it for everybody. Why? Because like you said, the gospel is universal. Our Lord's parables are universal, right? His wisdom is universal. The wisdom of the saints is universal. It's meant for everyone. It's supposed to be an appeal to all people, not just for one particular crowd. And the best way to do that is to stick to the things in story elements that work, that speak this universal language. Now, we don't shy away from her faith. It was an integral part of her life. She's a nun, and she's walking around in a habit the entire time with a big cross around her neck. And there's, statues and whatnot. And there's a prayer in Latin in the middle of the film. I mean, it's all over the place. But you have to do it in such a way that it feels genuine and authentic, and it drives either the character arc or the plot of the story. Because if it doesn't do that, then it just can come across as preachy or just bad filmmaking or bad art. And, that's not helping anybody.
And it's definitely not bad art. Look, I love the way, first of all, the movie is stunning to see. And I pay attention to cinematography, to lighting. My background, just so you know, is when I went to school to actually make movies, and I ended up kind of like you on the business side of the media world and never got a chance to really realize my kind of creative dreams, although I've been involved in a number of different projects and that as a kind of more business guy. But I pay attention to these details. I pay attention to lighting, to atmosphere, to camera movement, to angles, all of these different things. And the movie is, first of all, beautifully shot. It is arresting to the eyes, and that is really important because, I mean, at the end of the day, especially for a theatrical experience, you want to take advantage of the environment that is now given to us in most major theaters with beautiful sound and all this other stuff. The music is also very, very compelling. So it's beautifully shot. It's beautifully acted. Specifically, Christiana Delana, who plays Cabrini, I thought did a masterful job. But you've got John Lithgow's in it, David Morse is in it, Giancarlo Giannini. You've got like this great cast of people who really kind of carry forward the story. So the acting is really great. And then thematically, you've got hope and belonging and betrayal and obedience and struggle and sacrifice and love and like all of these just amazing things. Frankly, on one of them, you could probably make a movie. And you've got like 12 of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you've got all of this sort of ebb and flow, and the movie comes together in a way that I think achieves what you set out to do, which is, yes, an introduction to this great woman, but also this sort of this hope that we all can play a role in this kind of salvific plan that God has in our own way. Some are big, some are small, some start small, end big. You know what I'm saying? But like, I felt very inspired to like leave my watching of it and go like, yeah, we got to go do this thing. And that's, I presume, good.
Yes. Well, that's the hope, because that was our goal. That was our intention. Listen, Deacon, thank you so much for seeing and appreciating what we're trying to do here. You know, the cinematography. Our cinematographer Gorka Gomez.
Gorka.
He also
Sorry, I didn't
did,
mention him.
Not at all. He also did Sound of Freedom. He's doing our next film that we're in prep on now. And Alejandro, our director, they're visionary guys. They're incredibly high level artists. And in this particular film, they choreographed every single scene. They really wanted to make it not a motion picture, but a motion painting. So that people say it, and we've heard it before, every frame a painting sort of thing. Yep. I think this is one where they kind of achieved that, where every single composed frame was intentional, and it was all meant to have a very particular style that they were going after. That was an immersive experience for the audience. They really wanted to I'll give a little bit behind baseball sort of situation, but you might appreciate this, right? There wasn't a lot of coverage in this film. I don't know if you noticed that. Coverage for the audience who's listening is different camera angles. Like you might go wide and shoot one scene just with a wide angle, and then shoot the same scene with a couple of different close-ups so that you can edit from the wide to establish it. Then you go to the close-up, one person's talking, you go to the other close-up, and that gives you the opportunity to edit. So you can take from one take on the close-up and go to another take of the wide, and then another take of the close-up, and so on and so forth. We didn't do that with this film. It was all a choreography between the actors and the camera, because everything needed to be composed in a particular way because there was so much meaning in the subtext. And so that makes it incredibly difficult to film, but even harder to edit because you don't have a lot of options. So our director, he compared it to trying to free climb a mountain like El Capitan in Yosemite or something without any ropes. Because if one of these scenes don't work in the edit, then the film doesn't work. You'd have to go back and reshoot.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
So everything, every little detail was composed, choreographed. There's a subtext. I don't know if you noticed the use of archways as a mental call to like this transition of characters, or reflections in mirrors as kind of the plight of the immigrant who has a kind of a dual personality that they have to live in the their heritage and their background, and then trying to be an American at the same time. There's kind of this duality. We had images of little halos around her head so that she was framed as a saint. You know, all these sorts of things were all very much intended, and I appreciate that you were able to
for sure
recognize some of that stuff.
Yeah, deep symbolism too. In particular, I'm thinking that hopefully not a spoiler. I don't think it is, but there's a scene. Or a shot anyway that, and it repeats as a sort of as a thematic throughout in various places of her underwater, you know, recalling an incident from her youth. She had Cabrini had tuberculosis as a child, and you know, I don't know all the history, you know better than I do, but there was some incident involving water when she was a young girl and she got sick or almost drowned or something like that. And there's that scene, that recurring motif throughout this period. And there's one final one where, you know, she's feeling kind of down and dejected, and she's getting talking to by one of her friends, who anyway has her own story, which is remarkable. But anyway, one of her friends has given her this effectively a pep talk at this sort of lowest moment. And it recalls that motif where she's underwater and she's basically, you know, paralyzed there underwater. And at some moment during this pep talk, which you can hear, this is very Coppola, right? With the parallel editing where you've got like something happening outside of the scene while you're watching the scene. I love that. But you've got, you have her sort of as a girl come to sort of under the water and rise above it at that moment. And then of course the film carries forward that optimism and that encouragement from that pep talk further. But all of that symbolism is really powerful, right? We kind of like, those are the images, again, that you pay attention to. But now what a privilege to be speaking to somebody who was involved and played a principal role in the creation of this particular film, to really bring awareness of this great woman to a lot of places and to benefit from her by her intercession, because it's a real hero story in the right way.
Getting the scoop before you head to the movies this weekend on Cabrini, that is Living the Call, giving us their insights. If you want to check out more on their conversations, easy to find when you go to Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast. I'm Ace McKay. That's going to wrap up my weekend with you, but have a great Holy Week, and I'll see you Easter weekend. Remember, you can always check us out online and take your conversations with you when you like, subscribe, and follow. And remember this week to let God define who you are, and I'll see you again. Catholics Coast to Coast.